about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's be free with me. Be free. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the
I pressed the wrong button there. And we didn't finish the music. But anyway, it is time to start. Sorry about that. I was trying to adjust something down below, and it started us off early. Good evening, and welcome to our latest live stream. We are, as you can see, I'm on my own tonight, which is why I'm pressing wrong buttons. And we are looking at social action theories today, so interactionism, labelling theory, and various other things along those lines. We may touch on a spot of other sort of the action side of the debate, so maybe a little bit of postmodernism and things like that as well. If you are watching live, please do join in that live chat window. Keep an eye out for your comments. I've just seen one question, but it's about business. But anyway, no, not to worry. We shall. So if you've got any questions for me, pop them in the live chat thing, and also answer any of the questions that we've got as we go through in there. That'd be great. We'll get cracking in a moment. If you're watching this on catch up, and more people end up watching it later than watch it live on the night, then you won't be able to join in the chat, but you can potentially pause the video and have a little longer think about some of the questions. Okay, let's have a look at our first activity then. So we're talking about social action theories today, so I thought perhaps a good starting point might be to just revisit the structure action debate, which is a key part of the theory, kind of, you know, year 13 theory that you might cover. One of the debates, along with things like consensus versus conflict, we've got structure versus action. So we've got a range of concepts or key phrases down the right hand side of the screen, and all you have to do is put them under the heading of either structure or action. Are those concepts relating to structural theories that look at the big picture of society, that consider the fundamental structures of society, or do they relate to action theories, social action theories? Okay, let's see how you get along with this. So just you can just put S or A with a number. You don't have to try and do them all. You can do one at a time. It's entirely up to you. You've got a minute to try and sort these out. Right, it's all gone a bit quiet in the chat window. Are these concepts relating to structural theories or action theories? Well, let's have a look at the right answer, and we can have a little chat about why they're right. So, here we go. So the ones relating to structural theories, which aren't our topic for today, are classical Marxism, patriarchy and feminism are obviously clearly linked, and functionalism. Those sort of structural theories, functionalism, Marxism, feminism. The ones that relate much more to action theories, interactionism as a perspective in itself. The idea of agency, that's the idea that individuals have agency, can make choices, can decide what to do. We're not driven along by structural social forces outside our control, according to social action theorists. The self, the concept of the self, the idea of the self, and Erving Goffman's idea of the dramaturgical model. All the world is a stage, and we're all actors on that stage. Okay, some of these concepts are obviously, particularly on the right hand side of your screen, are obviously going to come up in the rest of the activities. So let's see how you get on with some of these. So just some multiple choice questions to start with. Which of the following sociologists is often seen as the father of social action theories? Is it Karl Marx, Emil Durkheim, Tolcott Parsons, or Max Weber? Give you a moment or two to have a think about this one. It is, in fact, Max Weber. Marx, obviously, we know is a Marxist. Durkheim and Parsons we associate with functionalism. Max Weber, we often sort of put him on his own, really, talk about him as being Weberian, but he's often seen as the father of social action theory, where he started to go beyond the kind of structural theories of, particularly Marx, and start to look at humans as agents, as actors, not just as people to whom society happens, but also the makers of society. Which of the following approaches is not a form of social action theory? We've got A, the new right, B, phenomenology, C, symbolic interactionism, D, labelling theory. Don't worry if not every single one of these terms is immediately familiar. For example, you won't be asked to, well, you're very unlikely to be asked a direct question about phenomenology, but being aware of it is always useful. Knowledge is always good. Some of these will be very familiar. You will have talked about the new right on plenty of occasions, talked about labelling theory on plenty of occasions. New right is the one that isn't a form of social action theory. New right is most closely associated with functionalism, really. It's a bit like a kind of, it's functionalism for a dysfunctional society, if you like. Not really a social action theory. The others all are, though, and that's worth bearing that in mind, that when we talk about social action theories, we kind of want to be able to make kind of general comments about them in the way that we can about Marxism and functionalism and feminism. But social action theories are really a collection of theories that do have certain things in common, most particularly the idea of human agency and humans being social actors who make their own decisions. But some of these ideas and approaches are quite different, as different as, say, Marxism and feminism, rather than Marxism, the difference between Marxisms or the difference between feminisms. We are talking about a range of perspectives, not just variations on the same one. Phenomenology might come up again later, so I won't say too much about it now. You don't need to know huge amounts about it, but it is interesting. We talk about interactionism quite a lot, and the full title for that is symbolic interactionism. It's the idea that people are, that we interpret symbols. when we interact with each other. I'll say a little bit more about that later. And labelling theory is probably the bit that you're most familiar with. Yeah, we can put that under the heading of being like an interactionist idea. People like Becker did labelling theory. Okay. Which of the following terms refers to an individual's ability to adapt the way they present themselves? It's got a bit of methods here as well as theory. These are probably all reasonably familiar terms. But which one refers to an individual's ability to adapt the way that they present themselves? It is impression management. And it's a useful one for research methods, particularly something like methods in context, when you're thinking about perhaps observing teachers. Teachers are particularly skilled at impression management. They spend a lot of time considering how they're coming across when they are performing, when they're presenting. And so when they're being observed, they're likely to try and manage the impression that they give to the observer. But to a certain extent, everybody does, which does relate to the Hawthorne effect, of course. The Hawthorne effect is the idea that that people behave differently because they're being observed, or what you observe will change. One of the reasons for that is impression management. Social desirability bias is linked as well. It's something we see more, probably a term you see more in psychology, but you can apply it in sociology too. One of the reasons one might try and manage the impression is to try and be socially desirable, to say what we think people want to hear. And the looking glass self is again related. This is the idea that we come to view ourselves as we think others view us. So we see how people react to us, and that helps construct our sense of self. So they're all related, but the one specifically relating to a term that refers to the individual's ability to adapt the way they present themselves is impression management. And it's relevant here for two reasons. One, it does directly relate to Erving Goffman's study on the presentation of the self in everyday life, and about how we are actors on the stage, and part of that is our impression management. We try and play the part of the role that we're performing. But it's also really relevant to the sorts of research methods that interactionists would use, and some of their limitations and strengths, and the sorts of things they might be wanting to find from those methods. Which sociologist suggested that neither social action nor structures could exist without the other, or put another way, that social action and structure are inextricably linked? What do you think? It's probably something you've come across, a theory or an idea known as structuration, which is the combination of both structural and social action ideas. We do link it specifically with Tony Giddens, although it has to be said that Weber did express quite similar ideas. Indeed, when he first talked about the idea of social action, he essentially was saying that, individuals can make choices, have agency, but they do it within the sort of social context, which is clearly part of the structure. Okay. That's why sometimes some of the ideas surrounding Giddens sometimes gets referred to as being kind of neo-Weberian, although we tend to just say that he's a late modernist, and that will do. Okay. The sorts of questions you sometimes get asked for these sort of big theory questions, these sort of 20-mark theory question on paper 3, for example, would be, could be, evaluate the contribution of social action theory to our understanding of society. And one way you can go about thinking about, well, what could I talk about in an essay like that? What sort of content can I do? Is think about the topics that you've studied in sociology, your core topics like education and crime and methodology, but also your optional topics that, of course, might be different from the ones that are up here, but could include families and households, beliefs in society, media. It's worth bearing in mind that if you do, for example, culture and identity, you probably come up with answers to this perhaps more readily than if you do some of the other optional topics, because there's a lot of interactionism in particular in culture and identity because of the sections on identity and self and things like that. And we perhaps have to put our thinking caps on a little more for some of the other topic areas. But where have we encountered social action theories in this course? Let's have a spin the wheel and see which topic we're going to think about first. So, crime. Where does social action theory come into crime? Can we think what social action theories we would relate to the study of crime? What contribution has social action theory made to our understanding of crime? We've mentioned one key area already. You'll have to excuse me if I move ahead and people are still typing things into the chat window. I apologise if that's the case. But one of the key ones that comes to mind, let's see what we've written down. Labelling theory is the big one that leaps out. Labelling theory, Becker's theory, began really as a theory of deviance. We obviously apply it in other areas too, and it might come up again if we spin the wheel again. But at the heart of labelling theory is the idea that deviant behaviour is behaviour that we so label, that something becomes deviant as a result of being labelled as deviant. And the same act, the same thing, might not be considered deviant in another context. That's one aspect of how labelling theory might impact on crime and deviance. But you can also apply that idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy and something becoming someone's master status. The idea that labelling theory might create more crime. Well, not labelling theory. Labelling might create crime, might cause crime. So it's not just a reaction to crime or just a label, as Becker initially said. Is the idea of deviance is just that which we label, but that by labelling people as being deviant, they may go on to commit crimes and do more crimes. And that links to ideas like the deviancy amplification spiral as well, that the societal reaction to crime then leads to more crime, then leads to a greater reaction which leads to more crime. The negotiation of justice, Mayer and Cicero. That's the idea that people from certain social backgrounds, etc., could negotiate the criminal justice system. Example that it might use would be perhaps two people being detained or questioned over the same act, but perhaps one from a more kind of marginalised, less socially lower in a social hierarchy position might well be found to have been very much guilty of a crime, and someone doing the same thing, the exact same thing, but from a wealthier background or higher status might well, it might be just thought of as being hijinks. The one might get charged with a crime, the other be given a warning or a slap on the wrist, etc. Moral panics and folk devils. Obviously, you're familiar with that with Stan Cohen. A good example of an interactionist theory that you could bring into a general essay on the contributions of social action theories to crime and deviance. Incidentally, this might seem like a really obvious point, but it's just worth reiterating that on that paper 3, if you get a theory question on paper 3, you don't have to just talk about crime. We think of paper 3 as being the crime paper, and obviously most of the questions are about crime, but when you get to those last 2 questions, the theory and methods questions, you can talk about any topic. You don't feel that you have to be restricted to talk about crime. As such, hopefully when we spin the wheel again, it's going to land somewhere else. And you'd be just as welcome to bring in some of this content if you got this question on paper 3. Education. So our other core topic. So what sorts of contributions have interactionists made to our understanding of education? I'll give you a minute to think about that. Incidentally, of course, the paper 1, which we think of as the education paper, is the other place where a theory question could come up. It could come up as a 10 marker on paper 1, as it could on paper 3. It could be a 10 or a 20 on paper 3, but it could be a 10 on paper 1. So you wouldn't get to evaluate the contribution, but you might get 2 strengths of, or 2 reasons why social action theories are better than structural theories, or something like that. Is a possible question. And again, on paper 1, you wouldn't have to just talk about education in your response to that question. You could use examples from anywhere. So labelling theory, of course, comes up again in the education topic. We apply Becker to education too, and particularly we think about it perhaps in terms of the self-fulfilling prophecies. So you can link it to Rosenthal and Jacobson and all that kind of thing. And then also in that bit about sort of processes within schools, and particularly the relationship between that and identity and people's identities, that is classic social action stuff and identity formation. So those are the main ways we could think about social action theories and education, and so you could bring those into an essay. And if we're thinking about a 20-mark essay here, we can probably see how maybe a paragraph on labelling, we could be making an argument that it's had a pretty big contribution because it's contributed to our understanding of both crime and deviance and education. Okay, perhaps now you could give me 3 main considerations for social action theorists when they conduct research. So we're making a connection to methodology now. We're making these links. We're always being synoptic when we're thinking about theory. Social action theorists tend to take a different approach to research than structural theorists. Put this in another way, micro-sociologists tend to have a different approach to macro-sociologists when they're conducting their research in terms of the sorts of data they want to get, the kind of methods they want to use, sorts of topics they may study. So have a think about that. Give me 3 main considerations for social action theorists when they conduct research. Okay, so we tend to find that social action theorists tend to prefer interpretivist approaches in terms of methodology, and so they're after particular types of data when they choose those sorts of methods. They're looking for Verstehen, that deep empathetic understanding, to see things from the point of view of the people that they are researching. Linked to that, very closely linked to that, is they have a preference for methods that produce qualitative data. If we're thinking about these sociologists, they're wanting to know about how people interpret things. They're wanting to, things like the whole symbolic interactionism and idea, the whole idea of how people interpret symbols. They want to see interactions between individuals. They want to get people's subjective opinions, and so qualitative data is really what they're after here. And they're likely to reject methods that attempt to be scientific. A big part of being a social action theorist rather than a structural theorist is this idea that humans have agency and they can make their own decisions. And therefore, you're likely to hold the view that humans are unpredictable and we won't obey kind of models and rules in the way that things that we might study in the natural sciences would. And therefore, we would tend to reject the more scientific approaches. Okay. Bit of fun, although not easy. Well, you've got all the letters of the two words social action, and what I want you to try and do, you've got 60 seconds, is to see how many key terms relating to social action theories, and we've covered a lot today already, so I'm sure some of those will come up. You can come up with for each letter of the words social action. So, for example, S could be society or social, but I'm sure you'll come up with something better. And carry on, something beginning with an O, something beginning with a C, something beginning with an I. Some of them, I think, reasonably straightforward, key terms that we've talked about today. Some of them a bit harder. Definitely one or two that, especially where we kind of repeat letters, we've got to come up with two O's, two I's, two A's. Might have to start thinking outside the box a little bit, but let's see what you come up with. Oh, Layla's come in with L for labelling, absolutely. I suspect that might be where I've gone with my L as well. Can use names as well as terms if you want. I've just thought of an L term as well as an L name as well as a term. Oh, well done, Layla. Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy. Seconds seems to go very quickly. Just because a couple of answers have started coming through, I'll just give a few more seconds just to see. And also there tends to be a little bit of a delay. So I'll just give it a few more seconds just to see if any more come in before I show some. Obviously there are more than one you could do for most of the letters. So it isn't that there's a right answer here. Yeah, so we've got some good ones coming through from Layla. L for labelling, S for self-fulfilling prophecy. I for institution. Obviously, institution's not specifically about social action theories, but social action theorists are interested in institutions and what happens in them. So it's absolutely, that works, absolutely. Another I might be interactionism, for example. Interpretivism, maybe. Oh, we've got two I's, don't we? So 2 out of those 3 would be useful. Give you a couple more seconds, and then we'll have a look at my list. But some of them are probably the same, but it's likely we've come up with a few different ones as well. Okay, shall we have a look what I've suggested? So S, I went with symbols. You know, as from symbolic interactionism. Self-fulfilling prophecy was a good one, Layla. That one worked very nicely for that. O, the first O, because we have to come up with a couple of O's, went with observations. So it's one of the research methods that interactionists and social action theorists would like to use because they feel it may well offer them verstehen. C, we've got to have a couple of C's. Went with Cooley. Cooley, of course, we associate with the looking glass self, which we talked about earlier, that theoretical concept. I, interactions or interactionism, but we could have had institution. We need another I later as well, so come back to I later. A, we need more than one A. I went with action for one of them. We're talking about action theories, social action theories. L, I like your labelling. I don't know why I didn't go with labelling. Labelling's the obvious one to go for. Lemert is a interactionist who wrote about crime and deviance. I did say we could use names, but it's, yours was better. The other Ray, I went with agency. This is the idea that humans can choose. Humans have agency. C, construction. I mean, like as in social construction, the idea that humans kind of construct society rather than society shaping humans. That's kind of a central idea. Social action theory. T, tricky one was T. I went with typifications. This links, earlier on we mentioned phenomenology, and that links with that. I think what I would probably say is if your teachers have taught you about phenomenology, that's great, and read up on it, and it's a good thing to bring into a social action theory type essay, but probably not one to worry about if you haven't particularly looked at it. But it's an interesting phenomenon. Phenomenologists may well want to study the study of phenomenology. That would be a very meta. And typifications comes into that. It's the way we kind of group things together or make things into types. There were a few other I's we could have had. I went with impression management, which we can link to Goffman and dramaturgical model. Oh, I cheated a bit with that one, objectivity, the lack thereof. So social action theorists tend to be less interested in objectivity and more in subjectivity. I need to be slightly cautious with that. I mean, someone like Weber, who, as we say, is more of a Weberian, but seen as the sort of father of social action theories, did think that sociologists should be objective when conducting their research. They should not be driven by their values. The choice of method the choice of topic could be driven by values, but the actual conduct of research should be objective. And then N was actually probably one of the harder ones, very neo-Weberian, talking about Weber earlier, people who've sort of adapted Weber's ideas to contemporary society are sometimes described as neo-Weberian, like neo-Marxist or whatever, similar idea. Okay, if you need more help with some of these things, do go along to the 222 website. We've got exam skills workbook for theory and debates. Research methods, actually the theory of methods study book is going to be replacing that revision guide very soon. That'll be available very soon. Okay, I'm going to come back to me, hopefully. I'm having one of those days, but I'm sure I will. Where have I gone? There I am. Hello. So, thank you very much. Thanks for your contributions to the discussion and your answers. Some good ones there from Layla. Thank you at the end there. Thank you. And this is our last live stream for a bit. We'll do loads in the run up to the exams, and we have got loads on YouTube, on the Tutor channel, if you want to look back on old ones we've done. But the reason I'm not going to be doing one for a few weeks is because we're off on tour. We're off on tour doing our grade booster workshops in cinemas. So next week we're in Newcastle, Leeds and Manchester. The following week Bristol and Birmingham, and then London. So we're doing all those before Easter. So we might be seeing some of you there, and if you've already booked, or your school's booked, it'll be good to see you. It's also something you can book on as an individual. So if you're wanting to do some more revision on a bigger scale in a cinema with other people around you doing the revision, then book on, and we'll see you there. Okay, thanks very much, and we'll see you later on in a few weeks' time for some pre-exam revision, where the live numbers tend to be very high. There tend to be a lot of people all piling in with their answers in those last few weeks before the exams. Okay, cheers guys, see you soon, bye bye.